right, tonight we'll pick up in Luke chapter 5. At the end of chapter 4, Jesus had just left and was preaching in the synagogues of Galilee. And here we pick up in verse 1 of chapter 5. And it came to pass that as the people pressed upon him to hear the word of God, he stood by the lake of Gennesaret. And he saw two ships standing by the lake, but the fishermen were gone out of them, and they were washing their nets. There's something pretty awesome there in verse 1. The people pressed upon him. There was a large crowd around him, and they were gathering around Jesus. And the only purpose was, at this time, was to hear the word. We don't see that very often in the world today. People knocking down the church doors to hear the word of God. But here we see that they were. And while they were on the mountain there, or by the lake, Jesus saw there was two ships out there, but no fishermen. And he entered into one of the ships, which was Simon's, and prayed him that he would thrust out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people out of the ship. I think there was so many people, Jesus was getting a little claustrophobic. Don't you think? Because he just told him to push out just a little bit, and he still continued to teach out of the ship. I think he was just getting a little bit crowded, wanted a little bit of space. And he just walked right on the boat. That'd be like me walking right up and just getting in Andrew's car and being like, hey, take me over here. He just walked right in. And now when he had left speaking, or finished speaking, he said unto Simon, launch out into the deep and let your nets down for a drought. Now a drought's a catch, a large catch. And Simon answering said unto him, Master. Now there's been no introduction here. He just walks on Simon's boat and begins to teach. And now he tells him to push out and throw the nets down. And he already is something about this situation that Peter or Simon sees in Jesus. He calls him Master. We have toiled all night and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net. Simon is going against everything that he's been taught. Fishermen, they go out at night. Evidently, that has been very beneficial for them throughout his whole fishing history. Now it's daytime. They fished all night. They're tired. Simon says, it doesn't make any sense. Basically what he's saying. Sometimes God will command us or give us directions to do things that just don't make any sense. And a lot of times we stop with this. We have toiled all night and taken nothing. We're not going to do it. But look at what Simon does. He says, nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. You think he's giving the due respect to Jesus, and he's also exercising a little bit of faith. These nets have probably already been cleaned, put away for the day. He's exercising a little bit of faith, because if they put down the nets and they don't catch anything, they have to bring them back, roll them out, dry them out, or these nets are going to rot. They have to prepare the nets for the night before, or for the night to come. But he says, nevertheless, I'll let down the net. And when they had done this, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes, and their net brake. And they beckoned unto their partners, which were in the other ship. Now, what's going on here? Do we see something crazy? He calls them partners. Now, I'm assuming that this is like a fishing business. This is how they earn their keep or their living. This is what they do they're not going out with these boats and these big nets catching fish for their family. They're trading or selling or whatever they're doing with these. And these are their partners. Two boats probably. It says two little ships, right? Two ships, verse 2. That's the two ships that were in this group. Why didn't this other group push out with their partner? Why didn't they go out with Simon and cast their nets?
Simon wasn't told that go up. Just his boat.
This is just food for thought. We don't know. But maybe they heard it and they're laughing.
I thought it was silly.
Yeah, they didn't have the nevertheless that Simon had. They didn't have that aha moment that Simon did.
So glad he didn't have me to do that.
Yeah, ha ha. Oh, Norman's got to go fishing again today. Ha ha, we're staying right here. But it says, they beckoned unto their partners, which were in the other ship, that they should come and help them. And they came and filled both the ships, so that they began to sink. All right. How are they getting these fish in if the net's broke? We don't know.
He said they began to break.
So they're fraying. They're not like we have today. These things are probably fraying, but not to the point of total loss. But it holds up enough to get enough fish in to fill both ships to capacity. Now they're over their weight limit and these boats are sinking. You ever seen that show, the Swamp People, where they go and hunt alligators? And they come back, they go out and the boat's riding real high in the water. They don't have any alligators in it. They go out and hunt alligators all day long and come back. And there's just about this much of the boat sticking out of the water because they have so much weight in the boat. They're just about to sink. It's not safe. So you got to imagine, and we're thinking a large fishing vessel like we see today. Probably wasn't.
No.
But still, there was enough room for the crew and Jesus to get on board. But these things are being filled to the point that they begin to sink. And look at Peter's response, or Simon's response. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." Where did that come from? Was there any conviction? Did he say, "Simon, I know what you've done. You've been doing this and been doing that"? Where did that conviction come from? I think he realized that he was. Maybe that term master was used loosely. But I think after he saw evidence of the power. Now, remember, he was on the land at the sea there, cleaning his nets right there on the bank. He had to hear the teaching. And then he gets on his boat. So he can't go anywhere. So whatever Jesus is teaching, Simon Peter is soaking this up. Okay, well, this guy's crazy. What's he talking about? Then he goes out and goes fishing, calls him master, probably just saying, all right, well, this ain't going to work, but we'll try it anyway. But then when he sees evidence of the power that's in Jesus, he feels conviction upon his heart. It's the same thing that happens to us when we see or experience the evidence of the power of Jesus and who Jesus really is. We gain conviction. And look what he says. He says, "Get away from me, because I'm a sinful man."
Could he possibly already knew by that before he ever went?
I think he might have. I mean, he's been in the area.
Because what I'm
Wasn't
thinking,
some of John the Baptist disciples were some of his disciples?
Not yet.
Following John the Baptist.
Not yet.
But this is right during the time.
He's fixing.
coming.
It's coming. Yes, ma'am. He's fixing to start
I know.
rounding up his
You know,
disciples.
He talked a lot about Jesus Christ.
Yes, ma'am.
but what I'm figuring is, it's kind of like a lot of places like farmers get together, whatever. They hear all this stuff, and he's sitting back here thinking a little bit on his own. Like, well, I don't know, this is pretty serious stuff, you know, how,
Yeah.
and these other ones just joking, so Jesus said, okay, this one right here is not joking. I pick him, and I'll prove to him what he did, so that he'll show the other ones. So, I mean, that's basically what I'm getting from it is Jesus knows everything.
Right.
God knows everything. And he wasn't taking all this stuff lightly. He was thinking and all of that. So he probably figured he'd be a good one. And I'll hammer him a little bit.
So Simon was soaking it up, and I think that he uses this to find out who Simon Peter really is. mean, he knows all along that he's gonna select him to be one of the disciples. But I think he's tested Simon Peter. I think he's wanting to see, like Mark said, maybe there's some things going on in Peter's person. I keep wanting to say Peter, but it's the same person. Maybe there's some things going on in his life. He's heard some teachings. He's felt some previous convictions. He hadn't made that commitment yet. And I think when he pushed out and threw the nets, that was his sticking his toe in the water, so to say. And then now when there's evidence of what's going on,
I think differently.
he's got the proof, and he automatically says, I'm sinful. And verse 9 tells us pretty sure, for he was astonished. And all that were with him at the draught of the fishes which they had taken, they were amazed. These guys were experienced seasoned fishermen. Did all their tricks all night long and didn't catch anything. So was also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, which were partners with Simon. And Jesus said unto them, Fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men. Why did he tell them to fear not? He's fixing to take them out of their normal, everyday lives. He's fixing to take their normal routine and mix it all up. These guys are not going to be fishermen for fishes anymore. And when they had brought their ships to land, they forsook all and followed him.
They became fishers of men.
Yep. You see, they left everything. It didn't say they rolled the nets back up. They didn't empty the ship. They brought them back to the land and left everything there. And it came to pass, when he was in a certain city, behold, who's he? Jesus. Behold, a man full of leprosy, who seeing Jesus, fell on his face and besought him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And he put forth his hand and touched him. Uh-oh. You see what's happened there? They have just broken Jewish law. When the leper was diagnosed with leprosy, they had to be separated. If you came near, within a certain distance, someone got near you, say, I had leprosy, and y'all got close to me, I had to shout, unclean, unclean, unclean. This guy didn't do that. Jesus saw that he was full of leprosy. That's like a skin-eating disease. It was probably very evident. And he immediately fell down on his face and said, You can, if you will. And he put forth his hand and touched him. So Jesus reached out. No concern. Remember, we learned last week that he was human. Could he have caught leprosy? I believe he could have. He was a human, was he not? Did he not experience the emotions? I believe he could have, but he was operating this time still under the power of the Holy Spirit. Wasn't concerned about what he could take. Reached out and touched this man, and he says, I will. I will. Be thou clean. And immediately the leprosy departed from him. And he charged him to tell no man, but go and show thyself to the priest. They had to do that. The priest had to go. They had to go to the priest to verify they were clean. And offer for thy cleansing, according as Moses commanded, for a testimony unto them. See, he told him to still go fulfill the rest of the law. Go to the priest, get him to declare you clean, as Moses commanded. But so much the more went there a fame abroad him, and great multitudes came together to hear, and to be healed by him of their infirmities. All right, so now this crowd is growing larger and larger and larger. And they came, I like how Luke wrote this. The first thing they came to do was to hear. You see that? The second thing they came to do was to be healed. see the correct order of those things. A lot of times, people will come to the Lord when it's their last resort, when they want to be healed from whatever it is, whether it's a disease, a sickness, financial troubles, whatever, family troubles, whatever it is, people will go just because of that. Well, here, Luke, I think he listed that way specifically first, because that was the desire of the people, to come and hear Jesus speak. If he was amazing those that were in the synagogue at 12 years old, imagine what he's doing to the people that are in these towns in this time. They're amazed, and they're seeing proof of what he's teaching by the evidence of the healings. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. What's he doing? He's going to power up. You see that? Sometimes it's good for us to get away, to have that prayer closet, like in that movie Prayer Room, or whatever it was, War Room, to have that place where you go away. So it's not necessarily a closet. I know Mark uses a tree stand every now and then, and I do that as well. Even getting in the car and just getting away from everything, just somewhere where you can find some quiet place. It's not wrong to do that. Jesus himself did that. There were so many distractions. They mentioned in this chapter and in chapter 4 and chapter 3 of all the pressing that was happening, all these congregation of people gathering around Jesus. He just needed a little bit of space so that he could talk to his Father. And it came to pass on a certain day as he was teaching that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was present to heal them. Sorry, thought I had to sneeze. It says the power of the Lord was there to heal them, was present. It didn't say it was doing it. It said it was present. Look who was there. Pharisees, religious leaders, and educated people. Look what they were educated in. The law.
Teachers of the law.
Right? And behold, men brought in a bed a man which was taken with palsy. And they sought means to bring him in to lay him before him. And when they could not find what way they might bring him in because of the multitude, they went upon the housetop and let him down through the tiling, which is with his couch in their midst before Jesus. All right, so Luke made it known that the power of the Lord there was to heal, right? Was there to heal. The only person we're fixing to see that gets healed here, watch this. Now, imagine this. There's 4 friends. They got a sick buddy. They hear that Jesus is in town. So they load him up on this couch. Not a sofa like we think of, but they pick up his bed and they bring him into Jesus. Well, when they get there, there's so many people there that they can't get in. What do you think the mindset of the people, do you think they were a little selfish? The congregation that was gathered around, do you think they were a little selfish? I mean, think about this. There's 4 guys, no matter how far they walked, but they carried a grown man, however far they did, because they needed to get to Jesus. These people have to see these guys carrying this man, and they won't part ways so they can get in. Maybe the comments were, why are they here? What's this guy going to do? Look at him, laughing and mocking him. They wouldn't part ways. But these guys wasn't going to be deterred by the subtle glances of this congregation. We've seen those in church before, haven't we? Huh? Those judgmental glances and, oh, what is she doing? Really? Look at that person. They don't need to be in church. They're not as prim and proper as we are. They don't need to be here. They're probably hot and sweaty, and you know this guy with the palsy he's probably dirty. They don't want him there. They don't care about him. But his 4 friends were so determined that they climbed up on top of the roof and started taking the ceiling tilings off, and they lowered this man down. And when Jesus saw their faith, it didn't say when he saw their friend, when he saw this guy ailing laying on this couch, when he saw their faith, he said unto him, Man, thy sins are forgiven thee. Now remember, the religious leaders and doctors of the law were there. Look who responds. And the scribes and the Pharisees began to reason. They began to discuss it, saying, Who is this which speaketh blasphemies? I don't know how long they've been there. Long enough for a crowd to gather. Jesus had been teaching for a little while. They had to hear some good stuff. And automatically, because he did something that went against what they thought was right, they began to, this is kind of where the charges against Jesus kind of began. Who is this which speaketh blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone? Jesus didn't hear them. He says, when they perceived their thoughts, when he knew what they were thinking, he answered, saying to them, What reason ye in your hearts? You think that set them back for a minute? Because you know they were probably whispering. There's probably a little group on their own. You know how we have those cliques in churches. Well, those educated people, those scribes and Pharisees was in that little group. And they said, this guy hears. Who can heal sins but God? Not at the tone where Jesus could hear. Imagine their surprise when he said, What are y'all doing? What are you reasoning in your hearts? It says, whether it is easier to say thy sins be forgiven, or to say rise up and walk. But that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power upon earth to forgive sins. He said unto the sick of the palsy, I say unto thee, Arise, take up thy couch, and go into thine house. Okay, that's a miracle alone for the man to even get up. Okay? The palsy is a muscular deteriorating disease. Don't know how long he's had it, but he's probably not moved too much. So his muscles have to be very weak, if not dead. It says, verse 25 says, Immediately he rose up before them, and took up that whereon he lay, and departed to his own house, glorifying God. So what he was brought in on, he rolled this thing up, put it under his arm, and went back to his house the whole way, glorifying God. It didn't say his friends assisted him, kept him there to make sure he didn't fall over. What does that tell us? It was a complete healing. When God does a healing, he does a complete healing. But it started with the healing of his soul. Because the first thing he said was, your sins are forgiven. I think that man immediately felt that. I think he did. How much faith would it have took for you, if you've been laying in the bed for a couple of months, for you to step up out of bed and say, well, I'm going to walk home. That took a little bit of faith. He knows he hadn't walked in a while. And they were all amazed. You see, it says all. And glorified God, and were filled with fear, saying, we have seen strange things today. Now that fear is literal fear. It's not reverence. They were filled with fear because they had seen strange, they couldn't understand it. And sometimes when we don't understand things, it scares us, doesn't it? That's where they're at. After these things, he went forth and saw a publican named Levi. What is that, a publican? Anybody know? Tax collector. Okay? So can we assume that Levi he wasn't a regular guy? Most tax collectors that we know were a little bit greedy. I mean, we experience that today. The IRS is a little bit greedy, aren't they? Sometimes they're not that honest. So he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the receipt of customs. So he was collecting, right? And he said unto him, follow me. He said 2 words. He said 2 words to Levi. Follow me. And look what he does. And he left all, rose up, and followed him. How much money do you think was sitting on that table?
A lot.
Do you think? It says he left all. So he left the money. When I first read that years ago, I'm thinking, well, he did like Simon Peter and them and just left their families. They left their home. It didn't really click that he was collecting money, and he left all that sitting there. Just got up and left. And look what he did here. And Levi made him a great feast in his own house. And there was great company, once again, of tax collectors and of others that sat down with them. But their scribes and Pharisees murmured against the disciples, saying, Why do you eat and drink with publicans and sinners? See, they're already casting judgment. That's all they seem to do is cast judgment, right? And Jesus answering said unto them, that they are whole, need not a physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. And they said unto him, Why do the disciples of John fast often, and make prayers, and likewise the disciples of the Pharisees, but thine eat and drink? So he's saying, why do the disciples or the followers of John, why do they fast often? Why do they make prayers? But here you are eating. And he said unto them, Can you make the children of the bride chamber fast while the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then shall they fast in those days. And he spake also a parable unto them. No man putteth a piece of new garment upon an old. If otherwise, then both the new maketh a rent, and the piece that was taken out of the new agreeth not with the old. Now a rent is a tear. Okay? And the piece that was taken out of the new, it don't match the old. It don't get along. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine will burst the bottles. How does that happen?
Because the old ones dry out.
Okay? And then fermentation. This is new wine. It's just been made. It hadn't really fermented yet. So while it's in the bottle, I don't drink wine, but you know that people, they like wine with the old date on it. Because it's had time to sit and ferment. That's all wine is fermented grapes. It's rotting fruit is what wine is. So the new wine hasn't had a chance to ferment yet. It just made it. So as it gets in this bottle, it's not a bottle like we have today. It was probably a leather flask or something like that. As it gets in there and it starts fermenting, it produces gases. And those old wore-out things can't hold the new wine. It says it'll burst the bottles and be spilled, and the bottles shall perish. But new wine must be put into new bottles, and both are preserved. No man, also having drunk old wine, straightway desireth new. For he saith, the old is better. All right, what is he trying to get across there?
Practical. Showing them how simple it is, his plan for salvation.
Okay. Why do you think he used wine?
Because that's what they had.
It's something they understood. All parable is a story that they can relate to. He's saying when you're made new, you're made new. That you can't be the old person that you were. Because those two don't go together. He used the example of the garment. You wouldn't go buy, I don't know what a fancy garment is. I get most of my stuff at the outlets. But a Vera Bradley whatever dress and wear it, or let's just say you wouldn't buy a dress at Walmart. You love that dress. and you get a little tear in it, you wouldn't go buy a Vera Bradley or whatever to patch that hole in there. It wouldn't match, would it? It'd stand out big time. You just throw that old dress away and wear that new Vera Bradley, wouldn't you? That's what he's saying here. They don't go together. You can't put new wine in the old bottle. You can't be the same person and be new as well. That old person has to die away.
So when you get saved, accept Christ as your Savior, you become a whole new person.
Yes, you become new. You're supposed to.
Yes,
If the conversion was genuine.
it's true.
And look what he says there. No man having drunk old wine straightway desireth new, for he saith the old is better. That's stubbornness. People not willing to change their ways. I'm pretty sure that the old wine is probably better than the new wine because it hadn't fermented. Now, I'm not sure they were sitting around just drinking wine to get drunk, but it just didn't taste the same. It's just not like it used to be. Those people are the hardest, you know. And it's easier for a younger person to be saved than it is for an older person. Do we agree?
Yes.
Think about it. I mean, let's say Norman's lost. How old are you, Norman?
83.
83. Say he's lost and has been lost all 83 years of his life. I can guarantee you he's pretty set in his ways. Well, Peggy guarantees it. He's not lost, but he's set in his ways. Okay, so if he's set in his ways now, how long y'all been married?
57.
57 years. Those socks in the floor, Peggy, he's probably not ever going to pick them up. They've been there since the honeymoon, and he's probably not going to pick them up. He's not going to change, right? That's the same way it is as we get older and we keep denying Christ as Lord. It'll make it that much harder because we get so used to what we know that the new scares us, and we're not going to change. I've seen several older people be saved, and it was a pure miracle. My granddaddy was one, and my Uncle Dan. I genuinely seen his conversion. It was almost like a light switch was turned on. My Uncle Dan was he was sour and mean, and I mean, he was a loving guy, but the world did him wrong. The world was out to get him, and this is the way it's going to be, and I'm just going to be mean. But he had diabetes, and it just about took his life. And we were at the hospital, and the daddy was talking with him, and he agreed that he needed daddy and his daddy's old preacher were in there. The preacher would come back every now and then and talk with him. And finally, one day we were there, and he said, "Preacher, I believe today's the day." And just like that, I mean, it was almost like he had a glow, like he wasn't sour-faced anymore. He looked like he eat lemons all the time. But after that moment, even though he's in this hospital, in pain, here it is. He's smiling. His whole demeanor changes. There's like a little glow around him. It was genuine. I never thought that would have took place because he was so stubborn, so set in his ways, didn't want to hear nothing about Jesus because if God was so good, why has this happened and why has this happened? And it goes back to real deep history. His older brother graduated high school, and they went out that night. Well, that night, his older brother drowned. And from that point on, he was angry with God. And from that point on, things started happening in his life that I think it was God just trying to get his attention. But you know how when you're angry and bitter and everything bad happens and you always blame it on something. And he was just so far away from God and never thought he would make that conversion. But he did. But Jesus is making this statement here that it's easier or it's more difficult for someone that is set in their ways to desire the new. Look who he's talking to. Remember who he's talking to? The scribes and the Pharisees. That's who he's talking to. He knows that they're set in his ways. He knows what's coming in just a few short years. He knows they're going to be the ones that nail him to the cross. He knows that they're set in his ways. I wonder how many of those went home and thought about that. Okay, that's chapter 5. Any questions?
But he always picks out the lowest or the farthest one. He never picked anybody up close there, and always further. Somebody you wouldn't think that he would. And I think he's trying to teach us that point too, that it's not always the ones you think that are going to be the best for you. I mean, he picked up a tax collector, a couple of fishermen. Nobody likes tax collectors and fishermen. Always smell like fish. Nobody want to be around them, but look how God used them. And then he took a Pharisee of the Pharisees. The most evil man in the whole clan of Pharisees. He took him, and Paul turned the world upside down with his ministry. It's always the ones that you least expect. And that is because God wants to show his power in changing and using the least of the least. It's always been the least of the least with him. Why? Because if we get a big head, think about it. Look what I've done. God called me because I have all this and all that. Now, God called you because he's going to give you everything you need to carry out whatever it is he's called you to do. I never in a million years thought I'd be able to do this. Never. I mean, I'm barely getting by with it, but it's God doing it. It's not me. Think back 12 years ago, and let's go 15. 15 years ago, I really didn't want to be in church. I went because Crystal wanted to go, and we had some friends there, and the preacher that was there, we grew up with him, and just felt an obligation. I really didn't even want to be there. But then God started doing some things, and I kind of run from those things, and I never thought the preacher that came after that, we was doing Bible study one night, and he said, I feel like the Lord's calling somebody, God's going to call somebody to preach in this church. It was not me that he was talking about. Never thought it was going to be me. But as I began to open up, and I was saved, but as I began to open up and let God have more of me, everything that I know and that I'm able to teach, it comes from him. Yes, I study, but man, he enlightens me. I mean, I'm reading the same words you're reading, but God enlightens me. And there's no way that I could be able to do this. Stand up in front of people and talk. Put my face on mass media where everybody who has access can see it. That wasn't me. Now, I'm not shy by no means, but to stand up and talk, and especially talk about this, something that's so vital and so important. Now, I get up and tell jokes all day long. Why? Because if you're laughing, you're not really looking at me, you're just laughing. But now, at this point, you're listening and looking, but I don't want you to see me. I'm hoping that you see God through me. But God equips us for the calling that he's placed on his life. And that's what he's done here. You didn't see none of these disciples that he just picked up. They didn't get on Peter's boat and ride over to the seminary, did they?
No.
Did you see? Did they? No, what did they do? They stayed with Jesus and they listened to his teachings. So what does that tell us? We may never be the greatest preacher, teacher, Sunday school director. We may never be the greatest Christian that's ever set foot on the face of this earth. But if we stay with Jesus, he will educate us and he will give us what we need to carry out whatever ministry he has for us. Any questions?
I have something I'd like to share.
Share away.
I used to, I worked at a wedding chapel where we did weddings, wedding chapel by the sea in Myrtle Beach.